Hello Year 3, I'm going to read you The Train to Impossible Places, and we've got to Chapter 18, The Vault of Secrets. The old postmaster was going to help Wilmot and Susie find a secret for the Ivory Tower, and this is where we've got to. Wilmot led their small procession back into the post office. The mean-faced receptionist was still behind her desk and glared at them disapprovingly as they approached. Susie glared back, hoping the fussy little creature wouldn't cause them any more delays. "Can I help you?" the receptionist said, as though she didn't want to. Wilmot gave his best smile and nudged Mr. Trellis. "What?" the old troll said, startled. "Oh, yes, sorry, hello." He stepped forward and slapped a hand down on the desk. The receptionist shrank back from it a little. "Bertram Trellis, former postie. I've got something in the vault." The receptionist sniffed. "Do you have your key?" Mr. Trellis reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out the length of chain with the key on the end of it. "Will this do?" The receptionist looked from the key to Mr. Trellis to the rest of the group. "Do you know your way?" "Perfectly well, thank you," said Gertrude, holding her head high and sweeping past the desk. Susie couldn't help taking a small amount of satisfaction in the receptionist's obvious annoyance before setting off in pursuit. "The receptionist must be new," Wilmot grinned as he trotted alongside Susie. "Otherwise she'd have been nicer to Mum." "Why?" said Susie. "Because I used to work here," said Gertrude. "People knew me." "She's being modest," said Wilmot. "She didn't just work here, she was in charge." "What?" said Susie. "Of the post office?" "Of everything," said Wilmot, beaming with pride. She was postmistress general. When most of her best posties retired, she found the rest home to look after them. Everyone here called her Her Majesty, but only behind her back, of course. "As if I couldn't hear them," said Gertrude with a knowing smile. They reached a tall pair of polished bronze doors. An elderly troll in a postal uniform was slumped on a stool in front of them, snoring gently. "Who's that?" whispered Susie. The post-provost marshal," Wilmot whispered back. "Very prestigious, very well respected." Mr. Trellis walked forward and kicked the old troll's stool away, sending him crashing to the floor on his backside. "Wake up, Derek, you great wazzock," he said. "Intruders, villains, pirates!" The post-provost marshal hobbled to his feet and pulled a small truncheon from his belt, but didn't seem entirely sure in which direction he should be facing. "You won't sneak past me." "A herd of woolly mammoths could sneak past you," said Mr. Trellis. "Now let us in." Derek blinked heavily and peered at Mr. Trellis through rheumy eyes. "Is that you, Bertram? What you doing topside?" Mr. Trellis removed the chain from around his neck and held the key up. Derek lowered the truncheon. "You mean you've finally come for it?" "I have," said Mr. Trellis. "The postmaster here. He's on urgent business." "Well, why didn't you say so?" Derek was suddenly businesslike. Susie had expected him to have to unlock the huge bronze doors, but they swung open easily when he gave them a push. "We lost the key a while back," he said, by way of explanation, as he led them inside. "But it's been so long since anyone wanted anything from in here, we figured no one's going to try and break in, and I'm always on guard." Mr. Trellis cackled. "Making money in your sleep, more like." He paused and looked around the vault. "They've redecorated. I like the statues." Susie looked around. The vault was tall, its ceiling half hidden in shadows. Rows of small square iron lockers filled the walls, and twin rows of columns formed a central aisle down the length of the room. The spaces between them were filled with ancient-looking statues, all standing at attention, broadswords raised in front of their faces. Susie couldn't help but be reminded of the stone figures at the obsidian tower, and tried not to look too closely at these as Derek led them down the aisle to a locker near the back of the room. "Box number 82517, if memory served," he announced. "Sounds about right," said Mr. Trellis, inserting the key in the lock. It turned with a satisfying click. Susie and the others leaned forward to watch as he opened the box, reached in and withdrew a small glass sphere about the same size as Frederick's snow globe. "What's that?" asked Susie. "A neuroglobe," said Wilmot. "It holds memories and lets you share them with others." Susie leaned in for a closer look and saw that the Neuroglobe was full of tiny brass cogs and wheels, slowly ticking over like the workings of an old watch. They passed a fine thread of crackling red energy between them. It looked like a neon caterpillar burrowing in and out of the clockwork. "Is that the memory?" she asked, pointing at the thread. "It is," said Mr. Trellis, holding the globe up to the light. "Do you know which memory?" "Don't tell us," cried Susie. Mr. Trellis laughed. "A long time ago I was standing alone on top of the mountain of madness when the wind whispered in my ear and offered me something extraordinary in exchange for my sanity." He tapped the sphere. "This is my record of what it offered me, and I don't mind telling you I was tempted. But it's yours now." He handed it to Wilmot, who took it reverently in both hands. "Make good use of it." "Thank you," said Wilmot, "we will." But before he could secure it in his pocket, a great commotion reached them from the corridor outside, and they turned as a noisy tide of people swept into the room. "Intruders!" yelled Derek, drawing his truncheon again. "Don't mind us," said Wilmot's Auntie Dorothy, bustling past him. What looked like most of the remaining members of the old guard jostled and poked and nosed about behind her. "They've not kept this place up," one of them said. "I hear they've installed that ether web and everything. Is this where they keep the sponge pudding?" "Dorothy!" Gertrude raised one questioning eyebrow. "What are you doing here, and why are the residents with you?" "Sorry, Gert," she said, with a big grin that looked anything but sorry. "I couldn't make 'em stay put. They wanted to see Susie lick the Queen's backside." Susie went rigid with shock. "They what?" she said. The old guard sniggered, including Mr. Trellis, but she heard Wilmot gasp. "Of course," he said. "I've been so busy I completely forgot." "Forgot what?" said Susie. Her question sounded like an accusation, which she supposed it was. "It's a sort of tradition," he said. "They say you're not a true postie until you've done it." "We've all done it, haven't we, lads?" shouted Mr. Trellis. The others cheered and waved their walking sticks. "They just didn't want you to miss out," said Dorothy, although she was looking at her sister, who let her mask of disapproval slip just for a moment. "Very well," said Gertrude, "as long as it doesn't take too long." "I knew you'd say yes," said Dorothy. "That's why we took a little detour to the franking room on our way here and got her out of her case." She turned and nodded to the old guard, whose fussing and chattering came to an abrupt halt as something was passed hand to hand from the back of the group to the front. It was a small velvet cushion with something gold resting on it, and we are going to leave it there for today. Come back tomorrow to hear the rest of the chapter. Bye for now.